Cool, Marsha. So thank you for doing the interview. This is the first interview I'm doing after I've moved to Australia. And do you remember the first time we met?
Where
was
indeed.
it? Can you tell people?
Yes, so we're the parish dinner for Our Lady of the Rosary, our shared church.
And Father Brendan introduced you to me.
He did, yes.
And then after our interview got finalized, then I went around telling people, I'm going to interview Marsha. Do you know her? Do you know her? She's from our parish. And people just kept saying, oh, that Irish girl. So I thought that would be a good starting point for us. So could you share about your upbringing in Ireland, your childhood, just set the context for our interview?
Yeah, sure. I think it's always the thing that stands out for Aussies if you're Irish. We always found it when I came here first, we did like sales jobs and stuff, and you always got snapped up as an Irish person for sales jobs, funnily enough. So I was, I was born in 1979 in Ireland, and the only reason I say that is because that was the baby boom in Ireland. So everywhere else had their baby boom after the Second World War in like the Western world, but in Ireland it was 1979, and the Pope visited Ireland that year as well.
Pope John Paul II.
Pope John Paul II, yes, and so we were referred to as the Pope's children, that generation. And like I say, so that was the beginning of the Irish baby boom. And the reason I bring that up as well is because it's sort of why the trajectory of the faith has changed so much in Ireland over these years, because it was the same if you kind of map it onto the boomer generation in other Western societies. It's like that same thing. It's like that movement away from the traditional and the church and all the rest of it, and that kind of rebellious generation. So I was very much in the midst of that. I grew up in very rural Ireland. So a little village. We had a church and a shop and a school. And the school was 3 rooms and there was 3 years per room.
Really?
Yeah. We were the biggest cohort to go through, and there was 12 of us in my year. So that gives you, because they usually had like 5 or 6 maybe. So we were the biggest cohort to ever go through that school to start out there.
So which part of Ireland is this?
It's in southeast of Ireland, so Kilkenny, but it's on the border of Tipperary and Waterford.
Okay.
So we're kind of the 3 counties. It's a very all of Ireland is beautiful, and it all has its own kind of particular beauty about it, but Kilkenny is very historical. We're right next to Waterford, which is one of the oldest medieval cities, so we've got a lot of history there as well. So growing up there, grew up Catholic, of course, because everyone in Ireland at that point grew up Catholic, and that sort of lended itself to, you kind of took it for granted. You didn't go to like Catholic school, you went to school because there was no other type. It's like, do Chinese people eat Chinese food? No, they just call it food. We just called it school.
Catholic. Yeah,
you're just Catholic, and you just kind of, so I think that's kind of, where when I was growing up, like my mother would have went to daily mass. My father would have went to weekly mass. We all definitely went to weekly mass anyway. That was just a given. You did your sacraments. You did your sacraments through school as well. So it was like the Catholic system here, but that was kind of how it was done. So it was very much, and I was quite prayerful as a child as well. I did feel like I had a relationship with God, but I wasn't taught that as such. Catholicism in Ireland at the time was it was kind of the darker version of Catholicism. There's Father Columba, who's another YouTube influencer. Could you call him that? He's a priest. He's a friar of the renewal. He calls it Jansenism in Ireland. It's like a type of heresy, and it's very much focused on you're condemned anyway. There is no, there's no real hope for you, sort of thing. So you're a sinner, and that's kind of how you are and how you will be. So it's a very dark version of Christianity.
So this was the Catholic version, you're saying?
Yeah. So that's I totally that totally resonated with me when I heard him talk about that, because that is what I experienced as well. It was very much very judgmental. Very much, you will never live up to the standard that you need to live up to. You'll never be worthy. Sex was just completely the beauty and the creativity of sex was never recognized. It was like, my understanding, like how I received it, was that sex was the original sin. Not like the fall, the taking of the fruit and things like that. It was like in our minds, it became like, oh no, sex is the dirty thing. That's why you're born with sin, because you're created through sex. And it was like, and that was very much the received wisdom. That's what we kind of understood it to be. And my sisters would say it as well. It was like, because they were taught by nuns. So the nuns had kind of moved out of the Catholic school system by the time I went into it. But they were a bit older than me and had that experience of being taught by nuns. And they said the nuns' attitude was that our mothers were no better than prostitutes anyway, because, you know, we had to like lie down with a man and, you know, have all these children and things. Wow. So that was the kind of the attitude. And my mother had some very strange experiences growing up as well, in terms of kind of how they viewed things. So girls were not allowed to eat walking down the street. My mother was walking down the street as an innocent 8 or 9 year old, having an ice cream, and a nun just like grabbed her by the scruff of her collar and pulled her into a laneway and stood over her until she finished it and said, that is the most filthy, dirty thing, to be walking along the street eating. And it was like she was in, you know, this, it was a real kind of a perversion, you know.
Or they saw everything as a perversion.
They saw everything as a perversion, yeah. Everything that was, so everything that's fleshly is wrong and bad, and, you know, that kind of heresy.
That's another form of heresy,
It is. It's complete heresy, because that's not the way God views us at all.
Do you think this was confined to the village that you grew up, or it was a whole of Ireland?
It was Ireland in its, in its entirety. The Catholic Church kind of, we kind of touched on the British a bit earlier as well. Ireland was kind of always oppressed, like the population oppressed, and then ripe to be oppressed again. So as soon as kind of, you know, the Catholic Church was always there, but it was oppressed as well until the British left. But then then the Catholic Church just kind of took up that vacuum. And I'm not saying this, the Catholic Church is in like the Catholic Church that we would understand. The people who were in the Catholic Church, it was very easy for them to fill that power vacuum and to take over as an oppressor. And that's exactly what happened. Okay. So the Catholic Church influenced all of the constitution, the, you know, health, welfare, education, everywhere. So they were everywhere within it. But again, it was this heretical version of Catholicism that kind of took over. And so, that was quite damaging. And look, that's the thing. It was that was the Catholicism I was growing up in. And you can see why our baby boom generation, which is like the Pope's children, why we fell away from that. There was a few deathly blows to it along the way, and particularly at the end of the 90s, a lady called Annie Murphy came back from America and had written a book about her relationship with the bishop, who was the Bishop of Galway at the time. She had a relationship with him. They had a child. She had been banished off to America, and then she came back and told her story at the end of the 90s. And that started a cascade of a lot of women coming forward saying, well, actually, I had a relationship with the parish priest. I was the housekeeper. We had children together. And then from there, you had people who were children in the institutions come out and say, well, actually, I was sexually abused. I was raped by priests. I was raped by nuns, whatever. And then the mother and baby home scandal came out. And so the Catholic Church has, in Ireland, that institution itself had a lot of questions to answer, and a lot of, there was a lot of soul searching done by Irish people around that. And so in the last 20 years, sort of my generation of Irish Catholic, majority don't identify as Catholic anymore, and are very, very angry with the church itself. And so not with particular individuals that did particular things, and, people who turned a blind eye to the things that were happening. Just there's a real, there's a rage, and it's a very understandable rage.
Rage against the church and its representatives.
Yeah. And so the way that's changed the face of Ireland, like it's almost unrecognisable now. I go back and it's a completely different place. It's a completely different atmosphere, completely different culture. So when I would have grown up, churches were packed. Everyone went to Mass on Sunday. Everyone had the sacraments. Everyone went to, Catholic school and whatever else. And now, where our little village had daily Mass, my mother would go to daily Mass, do the flowers. In the last, and I mean, it's only, she died 6 years ago. Since she's died, Mass even at that church is only fortnightly now.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's gone from daily to fortnightly, which is really sad.
We are talking about Ireland. Supposed to be one of the Catholic countries.
Ireland. Yeah, exactly. And then you had the whole cascade of things that happened like socially then as well. So you had divorce was made legal at the end of the 90s as well. So it's kind of, again, and there was a confluence there of economical stuff that was going on too. We had joined the European Union in the 70s, and the fruits of that were kind of coming through towards the end of the 90s. We had the Celtic Tiger. I remember thinking about it at the time and thinking, it's like the country's won the lottery and lost its moral compass at the same time, because the Catholic Church was really starting to be rocked by all of these scandals. And it's like, well, this moral authority that we've all been following has not been following its own teachings, and what are we supposed to do with that, and how do we find our way? So it was very ripe for atheism and agnosticism and all of that kind of to take hold, and then people had all this material wealth that Ireland had never had before. We never saw the wealth that we had at that point. I mean, it was remarkable to see a BMW when I was a child. Like, you would go home and tell someone, I saw a BMW, can you believe it? And then my parents had two,
Really?
Yeah, by the end of the 90s, it was like, when I was a child in the 80s, it would have been completely unheard of. And then by the end of the 90s, it's like everyone had one. Everyone had mobile phones. Everyone had this and that and the other thing that we'd never had. So it was a massive shift. That whole end of the last century was a massive shift for Ireland, massive shift culturally.
So that was the Ireland you grew up in?
The Ireland I grew up in was strict, devout Catholics everywhere. People went to mass all the time and all of that. And then the Ireland that I left at, the beginning of the 2003 was the first time I came out to Australia, was really starting to shift. But the change in the last 20 years, like, it's actually unrecognisable now. The churches are empty.
Yeah.
There's hardly enough religious to go around. We have one priest looking after, that.
Many prayers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, can you tell us about the family that you grew in, Marsha?
Yeah. So I was one of four originally. My older sisters were all the Catholic triplets. They were all born at
Catholic triplets?
Catholic triplets.
Okay.
18 months apart. So
okay.
Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
You get your kids. And I think my mother thought she was finished, but then I was born 6 years after the last one of those. So there's a bit of a gap, and it's it kind of created sort of a sense of me being almost like an only child.
Oh.
Like having, sort of, they were more like aunties or cousins, that kind of age group compared to me. So I had a very, I was a bit of a bookworm as a child as well. So,
really?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time kind of alone, really, because my sisters would have been off out. And that was unusual for a Catholic family to have any kind of a child that would grow up on their own. But then when I was 13, my mother had another baby. And it was a complete surprise. So I was the youngest until I was 13. And then all of a sudden there was a baby in the house, and we all kind of rode in and helped out, looked after her. So it was it was a funny dynamic in our family. Most people, like, the kids are all kind of born and that's it. And you kind of all grow up together. Whereas we had this very staggered sort of family unit. And my youngest sister then obviously was very much like an only child, because she had, all of her sisters were adults apart from me, and I was practically
13 years,
aging out anyway as well. So that was kind of that was my kind of family dynamic. I was very close with my father, but he worked very hard, so he was out a lot as well. He had his own business, which was quite unusual. But he was very successful in that. He was very poor growing up himself, and he built this business, and he worked very, very hard at it. And then we were able to kind of have those luxuries. Kind of, my sister would have grown up very different. So my youngest sister would have grown up very differently than my older sisters. There would have been a complete generational divide between them in terms of material wealth and everything else that was going on in Ireland at the time as well. So it's a really interesting dynamic there. Yeah.
And all families have some level of dysfunction, right, Marsha?
Oh, yeah.
So what would you say was the dysfunction in your family, and how did it affect you?
I suppose, I suppose it's a good few things to that. It's like the Anna Karenina thing, isn't it? It's every functional family is functional in its own way, and every dysfunctional family is completely, it's got its own rhythm. My poor mother, she had a very difficult upbringing herself, and her parents were relatively old. So her father was in his 60s, and her mother was like late 30s when my mother was born. And like this was 1948, so it was really unheard of for a woman of like 36 to, you know, be starting a family. And so my mother was an only child.
Okay.
And again, very unusual in, you know, Catholic Ireland to be an only child too. Yeah. So she had quite a difficult upbringing, and then her father died when she was 9, and she always she carried that scar with her a lot.
Yeah.
Her mother then as well, there was a lot of issues on my grandmother's side of the family. There was a lot of mental health problems and stuff like that as well. So that had a big impact on them. The dynamic between my mother and my grandmother was quite difficult too. They were they would love each other and hate each other and fall out and speak and fall out, and it was just very intense and very like not very functional. And I suppose that filtered down to us then as well. And I mean, you know, like my older sisters, they were kind of they're kind of a body of their own, you know. They were just like this kind of chaotic dynamic between the three of them, where like, you know, I remember them being teenagers and just like doors slamming and things being broken and all that kind of stuff because they were just fighting with each other. And my mother, God love her, just seemed quite overwhelmed all the time. She was quite stressed out, and I don't blame her either. She was, you know, 20 years old getting married. By the time she was 25, she had 3 children, 3 and under. So that's a lot, you know. And she didn't have the support from her mother, but she also didn't have that extended family support that a mother normally has, like her own aunts, her own sisters, her own family background. So she was very isolated and very overwhelmed. And I think that played out over the course of all of our childhoods. And so by the time I was born, it was kind of like, I think, you know, I think she had like more of an individual relationship with me. But also she was kind of pulled into my father's business as well. So she was very busy. And my mother was one of those people, and it's where I get it from as well. It's like, had to be busy all the time. So very anxious, very like, what's next, worrying, kind of very future thinking all the time. Whereas my father was much more present. He was much more of a, like he worked hard, but when he was there, he was just like, he was this great kind of an ease, a peace about him. You know what I mean? If you brought a problem to my father, it was like, all right, okay. Well, sure, how are we going to figure this out then? Let's just figure this out. Whereas my mother would be immediately in a state of like, oh God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We'll never, this is a catastrophe. And everything was a catastrophe, you know what I mean? Yeah. Putting cling film on sandwiches in the morning was a catastrophe. There was the cling film gets stuck to it. It was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Yeah. Whereas my father was just this wonderful sort of like, no, that's fine now, we'll figure it out and we'll sort it out and whatever else. So yeah, but we obviously spent the majority of our times with our mother though. So yeah, so there was a lot of that sort of like, everyone was kind of uptight and tense and things like that.
But how did it affect you in your formation, Marsha?
Yeah, so in my Catholic formation, or just sort of like...
Just as a character, as a person, like these things, did it affect you?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. I was a bit of a bookworm as a child, and books were my escape. So I just kind of, I sat in the corner and read. That's what I did. And there was all this chaos going on around me. My sisters being teenagers and my mother being, you know, catastrophizing, and my father out of the house a lot. I just kind of hid in the corner and read books. And obviously, you know, I had friends outside of the house as well. But again, my mother was quite anxious, so she didn't want me going out too much when I was young and that kind of thing. So I spent a lot of my time reading, and that was my saving grace, really. That's where I lived a lot. I was quite prayerful as a child as well. I would often pray, and I did feel like there was a relationship there, but that's not something I learned. That was just something I felt. It was much more sort of like, oh, please help me with this, God, or, you know, whatever like that. I would constantly pray. Whenever I was anxious, I would always pray. But then as I got older and coming into my teen years, there was a lot of kind of there was a lot of difficulties at school. I was bullied at primary school, and so like, because it was such a small school as well, that was really difficult because there was nowhere else to go. It wasn't like, you know, it was easy to break away. There was only like 12 people in my class, so you know, the 4 or 5 girls that were in it decided I was out, and then that was it. I was out. And so going to high school was a bit of a revelation in that it was a much, much bigger school. There was like 30 of us in the class or whatever. So I could actually kind of move between groups, and it felt much safer, and I wasn't kind of relying on one person. And I really blossomed at that point. I became more confident. But with that confidence then came jealousy and things like that from other people. And again, I was bullied. And there was this real, there was a very difficult incident where I was away on a school trip. We all went away to Scotland. We had like raised money, you know, through fundraising or whatever to be able to go on this trip. And a rumour went around about me. Some boy that I had turned down started a rumour about me that I'd had sex with somebody else. And they started calling me this name. They started calling me a nickname, Spread'em. And somebody had to explain to me what that meant. I didn't know what they meant by that. And it was devastating because I was completely alone. Like I was on this school trip with people in my class, teachers and stuff. And I was just kind of totally alone with it. And it was a big injury, and you felt very heavy. And so after that, then it was like there was I started, home wasn't great because school wasn't great. It was all a bit difficult. It was kind of wearing me down a bit. My confidence that had sort of blossomed started to fall away. I started smoking, I started drinking, I started, smoking weed. I started having sex very, very young. I was about 15 and I fell pregnant. I couldn't find a way to deal with that. I was young. Your
parents were devastated.
My parents didn't know.
Okay.
So I just took it all on myself, and I was like, right, well, I'm just gonna have to sort this out myself, because I felt very alone, kind of in that way. I didn't feel like there was anyone in my life that I could actually go to, and I decided, I was like, right, okay, well, I'm gonna have to have an abortion. But there's no abortion in Ireland at that time.
It was illegal.
It was illegal in Ireland at the time. And so somehow, 1994, we had, no internet. We had, press the button phones and dial the whole number. And so I just spent a Saturday afternoon calling around. And the person the man who had gotten me pregnant, he was much older than me. He was 10 years older than me. So he was able to kind of cover the expenses that were involved, and came with me to England. I had a termination, and that was absolutely devastating. Up until that point, I was this very vocal sort of like, feminist, and like girls can do what they want, can't stop us, and it's woman's choice, blah. And I was very like vocal about stuff like that, because I was just very, like that confidence that I had or whatever. And the ability to be able to speak, I was always quite articulate and kind of well able to talk up for myself. Waking up from having an abortion, waking up from that anesthetic,
how was it?
All went away. I was devastated, and I woke up, and I only woke up for a minute, and just burst into tears. And I remember the nurse being there, and she's like, "Comfort me, whatever, and it's okay, and it's okay, it's okay." And then I drifted off back to sleep again. And the next time I woke up, the man, the father of the baby, God love him as well. It was devastating for him. And when I woke up, he burst into tears, and then I just felt, all right, okay, I'm just gonna have to carry this on my own, because there's no one. And so we went back home to Ireland. There was all this furore because everyone knew where I'd gone.
Oh,
everyone guessed what I'd done, but no one said anything.
When you mean everyone, it's your friends and family?
My family, it was all around the village, it was all around the town. Everyone was kind of talking about it, but nobody was talking to me about it. And so it was this like open secret that everyone would talk about, but not to me about. And when I came back, my parents, obviously, like for those 3 days that I was away, and they were, beside themselves and so worried and all the rest of it. And I would call them and say, look, I'm okay. I'll be back in a couple of days. And they figured it all out. They figured it all out from, talking to the guy's mom and his family. And then, they'd referred to the police and all the rest of it. they didn't want charges pressed on that guy, and that's fine. And I think it was proper as well, because he was he was in love. As far as he was concerned, he was in love.
But what would be the charge against him be anyways?
Oh, like I was underage. I was only 15.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Exactly. But it wasn't. That wasn't the nature of the relationship. I was very forward and precocious at that age, anyway. I mean, I met him in a pub. So that was kind of. I was running wild, and and as happens to girls who run wild, everything that could befall me did befall me. And so I don't blame him, and I agree that there never should have been charges or anything pressed like that against him, and it did devastate him as well. I don't think he ever really recovered from the whole situation. I think it was really it was such an injury, and it's something we forget as well. Is men are affected by abortion too, and that's something we need to be mindful of too. And there's lots of guys who just kind of will run away from women and not take up their responsibility, but there's guys out there who've been really devastated by abortion too, and I think he's one of those people. And I did it as a knee-jerk reaction. I just needed this problem to go away. I didn't think through the consequences of it, and the consequences for me really were a cutting off of my relationship with the divine. That's what it felt like. It was a spiritually devastating experience. I knew. And I also, as much as I'd felt alone kind of up until that point and very, hyper independent, I was even more so afterwards. And I really felt like then, well, the one thing you did have was prayer. Now you don't have that anymore. Yeah, that was how it felt.
And in your heart, you knew that it was wrong, Marsha?
Completely, yeah.
That's strange, right? How we in our conscience know when we do something wrong. Yeah. That's written in our heart and mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was listening to something on the way, and somebody said it's the idea of heaven, heaven and earth, they meet in your heart. That's where heaven and earth really meets. And when you have that sort of devastating experience, that was it. I felt like I was completely cut off from heaven. I was just stuck with earthly things from now on, and I was on my own here. So
the abortion was the first turning point in your life. So what happened after that?
So I had a very rough time after that. Very, very rough time. I spent I only had about 2.5 years left at school. I was determined that I had to make it worth it. What I had done was such a terrible thing. I had to make it worth it. I had to get it out of that small town, because that was really why I had the abortion, was that so I wouldn't get trapped in that small town like I'd seen a lot of people do. And then I was like, right, well, I definitely have to get out of here now. And I had it in my head that I need to have children. I need to have lots of children to make up for this. That was my idea. It was like, if I can have children, then I will make up for this terrible thing that I've done. But how am I going to do that? And how am I going to get out of here? How am I going to make a really good life for myself? But of course, I had all that guilt and that shame, and that it just dragged me down so much, the pain of it, that I was just, again, I leaned into, alcohol, smoking weed, all of those kind of things. I went off to university, made a hames of university, just dragged my way through it, barely got through it. Met a really nice guy, and we were together for a long time, but we broke up when we, where it would have been the natural juncture to get married and start having children, we actually broke up. And that was very difficult as well, because I was 26 or 27. I was at this crossroads in my life again. What am I going to do? We were here in Australia. I was on his visa. And so I was like, I can't stay and be on his visa and us not be together. I just wouldn't be able to deal with the kind of the anxiety of that. So I left and I went to London. And I partied it up in London, and I lived a kind of very, I suppose, just clubbing and dressing up nice and feeling like, oh, I'm myself now, I can do all of this. And it was just great, this great sort of material salve over the top of all of the injury and pain and everything that I'd been through. I had no spiritual life at that point. I was just felt completely cut off. Still had it in the back of my mind, the only way to resolve this is to have children myself. But couldn't see how I was going to get there, because I would meet people and scare them away. Yeah. And I was very, like, obviously, I'm kind of an intense kind of person anyway. People always get that from me.
Yeah.
But I couldn't maintain a relationship.
Scare them away with what?
Sorry?
No, scare them away with what? Just how intense you are?
Being quite intense. I was so down on myself. I was so anxious and so depressed. And again, you're kind of in that milieu of everything's very, surface and shallow. And I'm very kind of exuberant. I'm funny, all of that kind of stuff. So people are kind of drawn to me for that reason. But then when they would get to know me, and they would see all this anxious mess that was underneath, and kind of be scared and run away, because it was like, oh, that's not what I signed up for, and that's fine. Totally get that. It's like now, if I met me then, I'd be like, oh, you're too much. Great to hang out with and have fun with, but like that's just too much. And there was too much there. There was too much pain. There was points where I got very, very depressed, and a friend of mine, a beautiful friend of mine, he's still a very, very good friend, was the only one who was able to really say to me, like, you actually probably need professional help, because I had spent kind of a few days on end crying, just not being able to, stop crying. I would leave the house in an effort to stop crying, but then be caught crying in the middle of the street type of thing. I was just in a very, very devastated place. So I did a lot of counselling, psychology. I had studied psychology myself, so I did understand some of it, but it was just talking through some of the issues. I unpacked a lot of the stuff that kind of went on around my mother and things like that. And it was helpful to an extent. And it did get me past some points, where I was struggling. But always, I just seemed to be constantly carrying the loneliness of it, the weight of it. And I could talk about it, but I couldn't heal it. So I could recognize it, and I could talk to other people about it, the pain of the abortion, the pain of my family dynamics and things like that, and feeling abandoned by everyone at that point, and feeling like, people had known and never offered any kind of comfort or help or things like that. I just felt very, very alone and anxious, and I couldn't get past that point. And so I was having a great time in London, but then I was realizing that London, it's not going to be, I can't really sustain myself here. I haven't met anyone yet. I'm not building a life here. I'm just going through the motions, and I'm going to be in the same place in 10 years' time. I need to get out of here. So I just kind of, in a manner of speaking, I sort of, just drew another hand, and I decided, right, I'll just go traveling. And I came back to Australia. I was coming for a month. And that was 13 years ago. Wow. So, we're coming up to right on 13 years. Yesterday, actually, when was the 12th of December? 14th of December, I arrived in 2012.
Okay.
So we're 13 years ago and a day. That's funny. And so I came back, and I met up with all of the friends that I'd had here, lots of Irish people and all the rest of it. And I got offered another job again in sales. And it was like, oh, we can sponsor you. And everything's like, well, okay, I'll just give it another go, give Australia another go. And so I did, and quickly fell into the kind of the partying lifestyle again. It was like, oh no, I'm still in the same cycle. What's going on here? And eventually I kind of, got on some dating sites here, as you do. And I did meet a man. And it's a bit of a longer story that I'm not going to get into right now. We were together for quite a while. We did decide to have a child together. We didn't get married. I wasn't, didn't matter to me at the time. I was really focused on, I need to have children. I need to have children. The clock's ticking here. It's getting late. Come on. And I was 38 when I had my son. And I, all of those years that I'd carried, like, I really need to have children to make up for this. He really did. He really did. He saved my life. And it was the beginning of the repairing that injury, that wound. Because when you have your own child, it's very hard. It's very hard to deny their soul, even if you can deny your own soul at that materialist level, and sort of like, oh, we're just brains and consciousness is just part of your brain that's going to die with you. When you have a child, you can see their soul. you can see their soul and it's so hard. Like, you just can't deny that anymore. I hats off to anyone who can be an atheist and a parent at the same time, because I just don't know how you do it. I did not make him. My body had some part in it, and his father's body had some part in it, but he is just his own being. And as soon as he came into my life, it was that I could see. I felt that such a deep connection, like I'd never felt before. And it was funny, I was listening to somebody this morning, a guy called Charles Murray. He's like a social scientist. You know of him, you do. So his wife had a conversion after having her child as well. And the way she describes it, like, I love this child so much. It's beyond anything that I can, that I've ever experienced before. But it's beyond anything that evolution needs it to be. It's beyond that. It's not just about like, I have this like physical bond to this child because I need to, carry my genes on. It's much, much deeper than that. And that is the truth of it. It is such a deep, deep connection. But of course I didn't go straight back to Mass the next day.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a longer journey than that. Me and my son have had quite a journey as well. I'm not with his dad anymore. And so he spends time with his dad. And it's just, it's the two of us that live together now. So that's had its difficulties and challenges and everything. But throughout it all, it's that relationship has repaired my soul so much. But the next step then was to actually find my way back. And so after he was born, I started going to Mass occasionally, and I would go, and we were living in Kellyville Ridge down the hills, and I'd go to the Catholic church there, and I would just cry. And then I broke up with his dad and we left, and there was a lot of tumult at the time and everything. My mother passed away in the midst of all of that too. So my mother passed away 6 years ago on Tuesday, and that was around the time that me and my son's dad split up as well. So there was a lot of turmoil and everything, and I couldn't turn my focus anywhere. I was just like in survival mode, but I still had this sense that like you need to find your way back there. You need to find your way back to something. And again, I started, we were living in the mountains at the time. I started going to Mass at Glenbrook occasionally. And again, I would just cry, and I was just like tears just rolling down my face. And I'm like, like pulling, and in winter I would like wear a coat and pull my collars up and everything so that I wasn't really, embarrassing everybody else.
Yeah.
Because I was just so emotional. I couldn't figure it out. And when I just couldn't figure it out. Somebody had said to me as well, it was the Holy Spirit. It was Jess Doherty from the Universal Sisterhood. She had said, that's the Holy Spirit. And I was like, I know that now. I didn't know it at the time. And it was really difficult. I was like, I can't just go to Mass and cry. Like, what the heck is this? I don't know what to do. Anyway, so I'd sort of put it on the back burner, and I was trying to figure it all out, and I wasn't praying or doing anything like that. It didn't occur to me to pick up a Bible or read scripture or anything like that. None of that occurred to me. And then I met a guy back in the dating apps again for a last ditch effort at it. And I met this lovely guy, and he was very devout Catholic. And he had his own journey with it as well. He had grown up devout Catholic. He had fallen away in his own kind of ways over the years. And then he had a proper conversion himself about 10 years prior to me having met him. So he had done a lot of kind of that soul searching, but also just engaging with his faith properly and really understanding it. He does an hour of adoration at the chapel every day and that kind of thing. And the conversations I had with him were just so enlightening. I was like, oh, wow, yeah. And I didn't realize kind of the intellectual depths to the spiritual life as well. I had no idea about any of that. We didn't cover any of that in Ireland. It was like, you went to Mass, you'd say your prayers, you do your sacraments, that's it. You just like tick the boxes. There was no real engagement about it. We didn't have conversations. So having conversations with him was just like so eye-opening. It was revelation. And I said, like, what do I do? Where do I start? And he said, well, just start saying prayers. Like, just start praying. I was like, okay, I'll start praying. So I started praying every day. And then it's like, oh, so what do I do next? And he's like, well, I'll maybe go to confession. It's like, okay, I'll go to confession. And I did. And I met Father Brendan. And obviously it was just in confession, so I didn't meet Father Brendan, I just went into confession. And I'm so, so grateful. And it was definitely providential that he was the one that I went to confession to, because his welcome for me was so warm and so exactly what I needed. I said, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. It's been 28 years since my last confession. And he just went, oh, welcome, welcome, welcome. You've no idea the joy this is for a priest. And it was just the most beautiful thing. He just says so, and I just felt the weight pour off me. And there was one thing I didn't tell you, actually. So when I was 16, so about a year after I had the abortion, I actually went to confession. Priest came into the school, did a bit of an internal retreat with us. And I confessed to him.
They didn't forgive you.
And he said, Jesus forgives you, but you're going to have to forgive yourself.
Oh, so he gave you the absolution?
Oh, he gave me the absolution.
Okay.
But I rejected it. And that's what I confessed to Father Brendan.
Why did you reject it?
I couldn't forgive myself. He was right. I couldn't forgive myself. He said, Jesus forgives you, but you're going to have to forgive yourself.
Okay.
Because he could see how torn up I was by it. And I couldn't. And that was the one thing I couldn't do. And I think that was my greatest sin, was the fact that I was forgiven and I was given the opportunity and the door was open to me and I turned away. Because that's what we mostly do when we sin. We turn away.
Almost like Judas.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then what am I doing? I'm wandering in the wilderness. I'm completely alone. I'm completely cut off. And that is the sin. It's described as the blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. It's like the rejection, like the knowing rejection of the Holy Spirit.
But why couldn't you forgive yourself, Marsha?
Because I knew what I'd done. I knew what I had done. I knew I had destroyed a life that wasn't my own. I cut myself off. That child had a soul and she was no longer in the world because of me. And I had done it for very, very selfish reasons as well. So it was very difficult. And that was my wound, and that was what I was carrying all those years. And when I confessed to Father Brendan, I've confessed that I had rejected the forgiveness I was given. And of course, there was a lot more sin after that because, it's death by paper cuts. You start with one sin and then you have to go down the road of justifying it yourself. And then you commit more sin and then you have to justify it more. And the more and more you do that, it's just death by paper cuts because you're turning away and turning away and turning away. And so by the time I went back after 28 years, I went to confession every week for about 5 or 6 months. And I just confessed everything I could think of. I just emptied my heart completely. And I was still anxious. I was still lonely. I still had this sense of just aching, longing, just not feeling resolved. And again, still pushing away other people, still being that anxious mess and not really being able to form relationships and things like that, apart from, with my son. And then one day I went to confession again, and it was the Wednesday. It became my routine. I would go to confession on Wednesday, benediction and the Mass. And after confession, sitting in benediction, I actually had that presence come over me. And I can't describe it any other way than Jesus just came and healed. And this sense of peace that came over me was just undeniable and so tangible in my heart. And I walked out of that church a different person. And and again, it was the tears, the cry and the whole thing, but it was so different. It was such relief. It was like being released from prison. It was, I can only imagine what that's like, but that's what it felt like to me. It was like I was just suddenly free. I was free of the pain. I was free of the hurt, the anxiety, the loneliness. I felt whole again. And so I'd spent years doing counseling and various personal development things and trying to figure it all out and put myself back together. But only the Holy Spirit, only Jesus can do that. Only Jesus can really actually heal.
But
and
the
from
counseling,
that point on, sorry.
No, I was saying the counseling and all the help that you got can eventually lead you to the point where you eventually come to God and receive the healing.
Yeah, look, I think it opens the way, and
Yes.
you have to keep your heart open to things like that as well.
Yeah.
And those things are really helpful. And and it's like, Bob Schultz is a great example of that. He's a Catholic psychologist, and his practice is grounded completely in inviting the Holy Spirit into that space to work with people. And he talks about those wounds we have, the lies we tell ourselves. I can't be forgiven. I can't forgive myself. I can't be forgiven. And then that plays out outwards as well, because you also can't forgive the people around you. You can't forgive the people that abandoned you or left. Well, I couldn't forgive the people who abandoned me and left me and things like that. But as soon as that healing came, then it was much, much easier to let go of all that other resentment and forgiveness for other people too. That was the real gift of it. And as I say, I walked out of there a different person. I was no longer needing to fill up all of my time. I was no longer, looking forward to, a stretch of a weekend where my son was going to be at his dad's. Like, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to call people. I'm going to have to arrange things. I'm going to have to do things. I'm going to have to be really busy. I was like, no, I can just be. I can just be. Like the freedom of it. And I'm still the same now. I can just sit in a room and be quiet. I haven't been like that since I was a child, just sitting in a room and being quiet. And it's been such a gift. And the effect then as well it's improved my relationship with my son immensely. Now I can, and I think counseling and all of that gives you a certain amount of self-awareness, but there's a different awareness when you kind of live in that space where the Holy Spirit is with me and is watching me. What am I doing? What am I doing? How am I speaking to somebody? And it's with me all the time now. And it's like, as soon as me and Marcus have a little fallout, it's like we're both able to say sorry because we've learned that together.
Marcus is your son.
Yeah. And the same with all of the other relationships in my life now as well. It's like, it's so much easier to let go of any pain, any resentment, any kind of insult. It just becomes so much easier to let it go. And I still, occasionally you'll still fall into that dynamic and stuff, but you have somewhere to go with it. You have this reservoir within you that teaches you to be better. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like a judgmental thing. It feels like a gentle guidance, like, that wasn't really the right thing to do, was it?
Yeah.
And so, it's been such a wonderful, fulfilling. And I encourage anyone, if you're in this phase of life where you're questioning, Catholicism doesn't appeal to you, fine. Don't go with Catholicism. Find something though, because there is something. God is there and God is waiting, and he's just waiting for you to turn back to him.
That's absolutely right, Marsha, because people say one of the difference between Christianity and all other religions in the world is in Christianity, God is the one who is coming in search of you.
Yeah.
But in other religions, you have to go in search of God.
Yeah.
So God is waiting, as you rightly said. You just have to come to him.
You just have to turn, and he's always there. And Father Brendan always says, it's like when I say that I'm sad, I miss my dad, I miss my mum or whatever, and he'll say, well, they're closer to us than God, and God is very close. And that's the thing. But when you think about it, and look, for me as well, like, with other religions, there isn't that sense of relationship. There isn't like, in Buddhism and things like that, like the gods are kind of, they're there and they're carrying on in their own space and whatever, but you're not invited into a relationship with them. You're not seen as this individual spark of divinity.
Yes. Like
we are in Christianity. And Catholicism then just has such richness to it. I'm constantly blown away, I've gotten into Brand Petrie recently, and like, the depth and the scope of it, you know, all the way back through the Old Testament, all of these like breadcrumbs that have been laid for us over 5,000, 6,000 years. This is the culmination of it. This, your salvation, your soul, your relationship with the divine, with Jesus, with that Holy Spirit. And, you know, and I'm actually going to be studying chaplaincy next year. I'm doing it through a Pentecostal organization because it's like it's a practical route, and I can start working and things like that. But really, what I want to do is study theology, and so I'm really excited for that as well. And it's just become such a massive part of my life. And if you had told me 10 years ago that this is where I would be, like, yeah. I think maybe when my son was born, it wouldn't have seemed so distant. But yeah, definitely 10 years ago, I would never, ever, ever have believed this.
Now we're coming to my most interesting part of your story, Marsha, which is you forgave yourself after the confession and God healed you. But I want to know how you were led in the journey of forgiving your parents, because that wound is so deep, right?
Yeah.
Because it was caused when you were a child.
Yeah. You know, it's seeing them through God's eyes. Because once you forgive yourself and you can see yourself through that loving gaze, then you see everybody else through that loving gaze as well. And you see how this world is such a veil. And it's so difficult to penetrate really what the world is. We have to wrap ourselves in garments of skin and get on with it. And I really see, particularly my mother, particularly the difficulties she had in her life.
But that doesn't mean she hurts you, right?
So her hurt me, but that was her hurt. It would never have been her intention, her view of herself either. And when I think about her now, I'm covering her with love and prayers, because in her essence, she's a child of God, completely a child of God. And the world was very difficult for her, and she did her best with what she had. But even, you know, in her devoutness and all the rest of it, and she was a daily mass woman, and she was even a minister of the Eucharist as well. Yeah. So she would take the Eucharist to sick people at home, and she, after my parents sold their business, like she spent, you know, the majority of her time doing good works. You know, she worked for the St. Vincent de Paul and all of those kind of things, or like volunteered, and all of those kind of things. But still, her hurt was where she was coming from. She never got to resolve those wounds. And I pray for her now that, you know, her wounds are resolved and that she is home. But my forgiveness of her, it had to be kind of done in a hurry because she was dying 6 years ago. And I went there at the time with the hope that we could have a conversation. Yeah. You know, it's like, you're dying, Mum. You know, like, let's you know,
talk it out.
Let's talk it out. She couldn't.
She couldn't in the sense?
No, she couldn't.
She wouldn't, or she couldn't?
She couldn't. And I mean, I don't mean that she wasn't physically able, because she was very unwell, and she was very, very unwell, and she was probably in the best state that she was going to be for the next 6 months before she died. Yeah. In those 3 weeks that I was there with her, but she wasn't ready. She wasn't able for that conversation. And I think over the years, what had happened was that she had tried various times, kind of in various ways, to resolve her own issues, but would get to a certain point and then have to stop. So I recognized, you know, I forgive her in the absence of an apology.
Yes, that's forgiveness.
Because that's going to help me. But really, through Christianity, we are really called to forgive completely and not conditionally, and not, you know, well, you didn't apologize to me, but I have to let it go because that's the best thing for me. Once it got to the point where I could forgive myself and kind of clear out my storehouse of wounds and drama and injury and everything else, I could really see her in that light of she she is a child of God and she was hurt. And I think of her as a child.
And maybe she couldn't have the conversation because she herself has not been healed from the...
Yeah, she had so much hurt herself. And it was, she kind of retreated into the hurts she had rather than think about the hurts she had, had kind of perpetuated. And I see her, just when I see her now, I just see her as a child.
Yeah.
And I really want to comfort her. And that's what I miss now, that I didn't get the chance to actually comfort her, because I forgave her at a distance. I had to keep this distance between her and me when she was alive, because, there was...
She could hurt you.
Oh, yeah, there was lots of emotional shrapnel. And now I just wish I could comfort her.
And were you able to forgive after she died or before she died?
It's been... there's been more forgiveness over in the last... I'd say actually in the last 6 months, I've forgiven her more than I did when she was alive. And when she was alive, it was sort of just maintaining that distance and sort of like, I'm not going to get involved in your dramas now, and I'm not going to get sucked into this conversation because it's not good for me. But now it's much more, I pray for her every day. I pray that she has peace. That's where I'm at with her now.
And what you did, keeping a distance from your mother, was the right thing to do, right, Marsha? Because she had the potential to hurt you. So I want people to understand that forgiving someone who has hurt you does not mean you have to re-engage or allow them into your life as before.
Yeah.
So those are two different things.
Yeah.
Keep the distance, but you can still forgive the person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean... I suppose the caveat there is, like, we're not always mature enough to be around that person again.
Or they're not mature enough to be around us.
There is that, but there's also, it is literally turning the other cheek. I think, and it's easy for me to say now, but I've had this experience with some of my sisters as well, where they've done very, very hurtful things, but I can now let it go. So I don't even have the conversation. It's like, okay, that's where you're at. It's not where I'm at, but it's okay.
But you can manage them now.
Completely. So, and that's because I've let go of my own hurt and my own injury. And I think myself, and this is kind of my take on it, Jesus calls us to be humble. And what does it mean to be humble? It doesn't mean hating yourself or putting yourself down.
Yeah.
It means loving yourself and others to the same extent. And so if I can look at my sisters and my mother and all the injuries and everything we've had over the years, and I can decide, I don't need to be hurt anymore. I don't actually need to be hurt anymore. My hurt is a choice, and my not forgiving is a choice. And not being around those people, I think of my younger sister has had a lot of those hurts as well. And very recently, she lives very close to them. So that's very hard for her, There's been this distance and this, drama and everything else. And she's been hurt terribly. But last weekend, she was able to say, you know what? I just let them come over because I'm going to be seeing them out. I don't have to be really involved in their lives anymore, but I can be peaceful. And I thought it was the most beautiful thing. It was just the most beautiful thing. She's so young and yet so tuned into that sense of, we just need to be peaceful. And yes, people can still hurt you, if they're in your life. I still have people in my life that hurt me. I still do. And I can momentarily get angry. I can momentarily flare up, but I don't need to say anything. I don't need to do anything. I can just sit back. Think about it like this. A snake bites you. Do you run after the snake
to kill
and
it,
throttle it and say, how dare you do that to me? What are you thinking? Or do you tend to the wound? You tend to the wound. You suck out that poison and you patch up that wound and you heal it and you focus on that. The snake bites because that's the snake's nature. You don't have to respond in the same way. So that's been it for me. A friend of mine told me that analogy, and it just is exactly right.
And
It
do
is
you
exactly true.
And do you ever regret that if you had not had the dysfunction that you had in your family growing up, that you would have had a much better life with a happily married life with a lot of children and everything would have been fine? Do you miss that part of? Do you ever think that way? Because I do.
My choices were my choices. Yeah. My sisters, look, it doesn't, like, it's not written in stone that that's what's going to happen for you. I know a lot of people who grew up in dysfunction as well and managed to go on and have those functional lives and, happy families and have children and all the rest of it. It's not a given, and we can lean into that idea. It's like, your past equals your future, but it doesn't. You're writing your own future the whole time. And it's up to us as individuals to be bowed by the weight of the past or to free ourselves from it. I wish I had discovered the freedom sooner. I wish I had realized that I could take that forgiveness and I could run with it and I could forgive myself. But I didn't. And, and that's where I'm at now. It's like 30 years later and I'm still picking up the pieces and my life isn't, what I thought it would be. But it's a hell of a lot better than it could have been. And it still is. And I get to parent my son. I get to mother my son in a very, very intentional way. And again, it goes back to the Bob Schutz thing as well. It's like all that generational cascade of emotional shrapnel that comes through us, from our families, from my grandmother all the way down, I'm sure from her mother and her grandmother before her. I can say it stops with me. And so that's what I've done. I've said that stops with me. I am not passing that on to my son. And my sister has done the same thing. She's got 3 young children now. She's in a really good relationship. And she's got 3 children under 3, just like my mother did, and one of them is autistic. And so she's got like lots going on, but she can still say, no, we just need to have peace. I'm letting them into the house. They can come over. They can, and I don't have to be totally involved in their lives, but we can have peace, And so it's up to each of us individually to put those heartbreaks on and say, no, the injuries and the wounds of the past do not have to equal the future. So that's where I think with it.
But there is a correlation in which how your parents behave and form you has an impact on how you come up in life. Because, for example, when somebody grows in a dysfunctional family, your emotional maturity is so hampered by what happens in your house. Yeah. And you are not as mature as your friends are. And they get married and they get to get a good job and, get settled in life so much faster than you. Because you had this disadvantage of growing up in a dysfunctional family. So that's what angers me. If my parents were okay, I would have had the life that all my friends had. But they hampered my emotional growth, or they were such bad role models that I learned so many bad things from them that I couldn't really be this mature person in the society. Yeah.
There's lots of people who come from functional families who turn out immature and because they take things for granted as well. We all know, all of these. I'll give you a really good example. The Queen of England is exemplary, right? She was exemplary. She lived a very long, dutiful life. She worked every single day. She took her role so seriously and she really saw herself as appointed by God. Look at her children.
Prince Andrew.
They're all a mess. All of them are a mess. There's not one of them that hasn't ended up, no, there's only one of them hasn't ended up divorced, isn't it? It's like Prince Edward is the only one that didn't have a divorce. All of that dysfunction, all of that emotional shrapnel that's come out of that. And you would think that somebody like that would have, created a perfect family. No. Everybody has their own journey in life. And everybody has their own foibles and their own sufferings to overcome. I think, I could sit here and blame my parents for what happened. And I could say, they abandoned me and all the rest. I just don't feel it anymore. Because especially when my father was dying, we had a sort of a roundabout conversation. We never had an explicit conversation about it. But But I said to him, I said, I'm so sorry, Daddy, for all of the hurt I caused you. And he said, oh, you didn't cause me any hurt. I was just so worried about you. And my father never worried, but he was worried about me. And he said the best news he'd had in years was that I was going to Mass again, right? And conversation with him from there, and I said, but Daddy, you like, you're dying. Do you want to see a priest or anything? He said, oh, I think I've messed up now because I haven't been able to go to Mass and I haven't been to confession in ages and I haven't been able to pray because he was so sick. He'd been sick for like a year and a half, just really, really unwell. And I said, but Daddy, God knows your heart. He's not turning away from you. Don't turn away from him now. And so we were able to have that conversation. Like, it's such a gift. And then you get to see your parents. It's just people. They're just people. And they had their injuries and they had their wounds and they didn't get that chance either. The wherever they grew up, whatever situation it was for them, they turned out the way they did because of that. And you can go back all the way along, or you can say, you know what, starts with me.
They could have been the person who stopped the vicious cycle. That
they could have been, but they weren't. So maybe it's on you now.
Eh.
No, but do you know what I mean? It's like, if not me, then who? If not when? If not now, then when? I think that's what we're all called to. We're all called to be saints. And what does it mean to be a saint? It means laying down those things. It means recognizing the earthly world as it is, as flawed and damaged and broken and fallen, and us with it. And just saying, if not me, then who?
And do you think it had a purpose, Marsha, like the family that you grew up in, the environment that you grew up in?
Yeah.
Like God had a purpose.
God used all of it for good. God doesn't change anyone's will. God will not interfere with the decisions that we make. He will not stop us from making decisions, but he will make good of those decisions. He will make some good of it. Look at the good he's done for me. Look at the good he's done for my father and my family. My father was a very, very innocent, like guileless man. He was so humble. All the neighbours would say, oh, like one of the neighbours like knocked on the door. Oh, I can't believe your father's after passing away. Do you know what he did for me last winter? There was a big hole in the fence and my husband was in hospital and he came down and fixed it and he never even told me, Like he didn't knock on the door and say, I'm going to fix your fence. He just went and fixed it and then went off about his business. That was the kind of man he was. And he had all of that injury. He had all of that injury from, marrying my mother and the things that she did to him and all of the difficulty. But he died in this peaceful, whole way. He was told he was dying. Well, sure, they're all independent now. No one's dependent on me anymore. It's okay if I go. He had no attachment left to life in that way. He was just like, I've done what I came here to do. And that's the thing. It's like God brought me back in time that I could go and spend that time with my father and help him through those last few days of his life. And he said to me, my father said to me, I feel like he came to bring me back to God. So for that man, he lived so Christ-like all his life. He was so humble and just worked hard and was loyal and had faith and just trusted that things were going to be okay. And at the very end of his life, he's like, oh, I've messed up. I haven't been going to Mass, And it takes his wayward daughter to come all the way back from Australia to say to him, no, Daddy, don't turn away from God. God's not turning away from you, And so, my injury all those years ago, my sin, this beautiful trajectory. It's actually, they're within days of each other. I had the abortion on the 16th of February. I always get the year wrong. 1995, 16th of February. My father died on the 15th of February, 2024.
Wow.
Yeah. So... God makes good of all things in the long arc, and it takes a while. It might take generations, but he will take everything and make good of it for you. Just let him.
And when you forgive and let go of the resentment and the justice that is owed to you, sometimes the memories and the anger keeps coming up in your mind. So that's when the Bible says, right, forgive 70 times 7.
Yes.
So you just have to keep saying, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive.
Yeah. Look, ultimately, justice isn't ours. It belongs to the Lord. You know? So we can't demand justice.
Why?
Because it's the Lord's. It's the Lord's to give.
But
it's the Lord's to judge. Ours is to accept. We accept what's happened, what's been given to us, the path that we've taken in life. We have to accept our own mistakes. And we have to recognize those own mistakes that we've made. And we can recognize that other people then have made mistakes as well. That's the humility as well. That loving ourselves, that loving forgiveness of yourself. Yeah, I didn't do too well today, but I'll try again tomorrow. I'll do better tomorrow. That's humility. It's just recognizing I'm fallen. I'm in this place. This is how it is for now. I'm striving to move forward. I'm not going to hold myself back with that guilt and that self-judgment. And then that judgment of other people, that's what holds us back too. It really does. When we expect and we demand justice, we expect and demand that, I've been insulted and you need to make good of that. No. I don't agree with that anymore. I would have very much had that view, particularly in my most anxious years and things. I would have been very egotistical and very much, how dare they insult me, all those kind of things. But it's a reverse pride. It is just another form of pride, where
but justice is a good thing to
and in victimhood.
No, I'm saying justice is a good thing to seek, right, Marsha?
It depends on the manner that you're looking for it. Are you looking for it just to, fix your wounds? Or are you just going to fix your wounds yourself? Are you just going to try and heal from what happened? Are you just going to hold somebody else to account? It's like the snake again. It's like chasing after the snake and throttling it because, it bit you because it's its nature. You can heal the wound. You can't change that snake's nature. You can't change somebody else's nature. We can look for justice in the world, and there's all sorts of secular ways of doing that. Somebody hurts you physically, you go to the police and you lay charges or whatever. But even Jesus talks about that as well. It's like, settle your disputes before you get to the judge, because you don't know that you're going to be the one that ends up in jail. And I think that's about the way we imprison our souls. We can easily do that. We can easily enslave ourselves by crying after justice, instead of accepting that the nature of people is that they're fallen and they're sinful and they will do wrong to us. If we accept that, then we can let it go. We can say, okay, that person did that because that's their nature. It's not something that I need to injure my soul with. I can heal. I can accept that that's what happened, and I can heal. It is God's place to judge. It is Jesus. Jesus is the ultimate judge of us all. We're not the judge of each other's.
And now that you've attained the healing and you're much more mature in how you see the world, do you ever feel, if I had this maturity, I would have, and if I was with my parents, I would have controlled my mother, I would have made sure my father did this, and I would have set everything right in my family? No.
Everyone's on their own journey. I would have just been able to deal with it better. I just would have been stronger in in maintaining my own peace. Because that's all we're called to do, really, is maintain our own inner peace and our own, keeping our own soul intact. Because the world is constantly trying to pull it apart. The world, the flesh and the devil will constantly attack your soul, and constantly. And so you just need to be on guard for that, but you just need to maintain your own soul. There is lots of insults I've had, over the last, 2 years or whatever, or it's been, a year or whatever, since I had that moment with the Holy Spirit. There's been lots of insults, and there's been times I've been upset. People have upset me, but I've been able to work through it and pray on it. And when I pray to forgive. So I will hold that person, in whoever it is that's insulted me. I will hold them in my prayers, and I will pray on it until I have forgiven them.
I mean, if you're able to pray, that in itself shows a great step towards forgiving that person, isn't it?
It's the first step, but yeah, you need to work on it though. It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, I've, tears and tantrums and blah and all the rest of it, like, you know what I mean? But it's work that's so worth doing. Just holding that person in your mind and just, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. And you might never say it to them, to that person. They might never be able to have that conversation because some people are so blind to their own, they're blind to their own actions. I know so many people who are just so blind to their own actions. They can't see, they're not aware at all. And they will justify and they will make excuses and they will lie to cover their own shame.
Yeah, that's what I find it amusing.
Yeah. And so guilt is something that kind of drives us to apologize or to make good of the thing. But shame is something that drives us to hide. And that was the first thing that Adam and Eve felt.
Oh, shame. Okay, yeah.
Shame. Shame makes you hide. Shame makes you tell a lie. Shame makes you make up stories and cover yourself up and the fig leaf and all the rest of it. Because that's what shame is. And shame is the real burden of this world, I think. Because it makes people lie and it makes people gaslight the person that they've hurt. Yeah, exactly. Whoever it is in your life that you need to forgive, they will do that to you because they're just not aware that that's what they're doing. They are completely justified in their own mind. And this is what I'm talking, when you say about, justification and justice and judging, we're constantly judging ourselves. And you can't constantly judge yourself as being a terrible person. At some point, you have to build some kind of a bridge and get over that and live with yourself. So you start blaming the other. And it's that outward judgment that. What I really needed to do was go inside and find that wound myself that I'd put there myself and heal that first and forgive myself for that. And then it was a case of putting it outwards because there's a lie somewhere in here that we're telling ourselves. There's always a lie somewhere that we're telling ourselves. And when another person comes along, puts salt in that wound, we're blaming them for the salt. But we're not realizing that it's us ourselves that's maintaining that wound. We keep ripping it open and inviting the salt in, So outside people, that's what they're doing. And they're just rubbing up against those wounds that you have. Heal that wound first. Find it and heal it. Because it's a lie you've told yourself somewhere along the way. I told myself I was alone. I told myself I would never be able to have real love. I would never be able to rely on anyone else. That was the lie I told myself. And that's the lie that I've had to heal.
And you know what's funny, Marsha? Like when somebody hurts you, you are asked to forgive that person without engaging with that person at all. Because forgiveness is your choice to let go of the justice that is owed to you. Now, the person who hurt you, they can seek forgiveness from God for hurting you. And they don't have to engage with you at all.
Yeah.
So this seems like a too detached process where the person who hurt you is receiving forgiveness from God for what they did.
Yep.
And you are forgiving this person without engaging with the person and you're just letting go of the justice.
Yeah.
In both cases, I find it very, very unjust. The whole process seems so unjust. Maybe and God makes it so conditional, right? Because you are forgiven to the extent that you forgive others.
Yes.
So, I mean, this forgiveness is always irritating me because
but you're not looking at it in the light of eternity. Because we're bounded in time and space right here, okay? And you and that person might not never have that conversation with each other.
Yeah.
But at some point, you're both going to be back with God. You're both going to be back in the unity of Jesus Christ and living in him and repaired and whole then. So if you think about it in the light of eternity, in this life, you might not ever have that conversation, but it will happen. Just not now.
Why is God pushing us so much to forgive? It's like...
Well, because it's the ultimate, isn't it? It's like we're here and we injure each other and we're falling and we've broken things and we're just like little toddlers smashing up the whole place. That's what we are. We're impetuous toddlers, all of us. We just get bigger.
Yeah.
And so if we don't have forgiveness for each other, how can we ever possibly return to that place of love?
But don't you think the process of forgiveness should be a two-way process where the other person seeks your forgiveness, because God doesn't forgive us unless we go and seek forgiveness in the confessional or when we ask in prayer. So if that is the relationship that we have with God, shouldn't that same process be applied between two human beings who have hurt each other or sinned against each other?
Well, I suppose that's what we try to do, isn't it? You got a whole, legal system and industry that's built around that. But it doesn't really work. Two people go to court and there's litigation or whatever, doesn't ever really bring them closer, does it? It doesn't heal their relationship.
That's true.
It's just you get reparations, you get whatever decision was made, and you're both on your way again. And it doesn't fix anything. It doesn't heal anything properly. I think because, look, we're not going to understand the full picture until the resurrection, until we're all reunited in God. And I think then it's just going to make perfect sense. I think it's all just going to make perfect sense when we get to that point. But in the meantime, we walk by faith, not by sight, not by anything tangible, nothing that we can make sense of. We can only just take those faithful steps back towards God, because we've been separated, but we will return. And the path is about how you stay on the path, on the narrow gate or the narrow door, that's what you're aiming for. And there's all of this other stuff out here that we can be engaged with, but that's the choice. That's the free will part of it. I don't know if I'm really answering your question there. It's a difficult
I get
one,
what
though.
you're saying, yeah.
But I just think that sort of egos come into play with people, and if you're saying, but you did this to me, and then the other person, well, but you did this to me, and it's just a constant bickering. If you, in your own soul, just say, I'm going to be at peace with this. I'm going to make it so that I'm at peace with this. And it doesn't matter whether they're at peace with it or not. It doesn't matter. I don't know about their salvation. I don't know about what forgiveness they're getting. But I know I can live with myself.
By letting go.
I know that I can have peace in my soul if I really let this go. And I just heal the wound.
And sometimes God brings up these hurtful memories or the hurt at the right time, Marsha, because if God had brought all this up, like when I was back in India, I would have gone crazy and I would have taken revenge against my father right then and there, because we were living together, like they were living with me. So if he had brought up all this anger and my hurt memories, I would have really ill-treated my father. So God brought it only when I was at a safe distance from my father.
Yes.
Saved me and him.
Yes.
Because the amount of anger that I went through, if anybody was in front of me, I would have done something bad.
Wow.
That's how powerful the wound was. And it's like recurring. Like when I'm shooting the videos and I'm reading the script, but in my mind, the whole thing is just running.
Yeah.
Did you also feel that way, that the memories were brought up at the right time for you?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I think I was given what I could deal with at each moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly how it's supposed to work as well. And what do you do now when you have that? Do you still have those angry moments?
70 times 7.
Wow.
So I went to the retreat and I wrote down and I said, I forgive my father for this, a long sheet of thing. So when that memory again comes up, I just get reminded that I've forgiven and I say, I forgive again. Yeah. So 70 times 7.
Oh, that's beautiful. And have you had a moment of sort of feeling it lift, or is it still quite heavy?
It's quite heavy. That's why I'm I'm kind of very happy for you that you have attained a much more further place in the process of forgiveness. I'm still feeling a little heavy. Yeah. So I think it'll take some more time for me.
Yeah. And look, I mean, it took me 30 years, essentially 30 years. Because, the termination was when I was 15. I'm 46 now. It's been a long, long road.
Do you feel you forgiving yourself for the abortion had something to do with you not being able to forgive your parents and yourself?
No. I know the abortion was central, and my parents kind of not being able to deal with it was close, but it was still periphery. It was still kind of outside of that.
This was main. Abortion was main.
Yeah, that was my wound.
So if you had not committed abortion, your life would have been a little more.
Yeah, I so regret it. I really believe it was just the worst thing I could have done. I think now, and I mean, I have a comparison as well. So as I said, my little sister was born when I was 13. So she was 2.5 when I had that termination. Now, if I had had that baby, who I'm convinced is a girl, and I've named her Abigail, she would have been more like a little sister to my sister. My sister wouldn't have grown up an only child like she did, you know? And what would it have been? It would have been another, you know, like 15 years of, I might have moved away from where I was. I might still have gone to uni. I don't know. It's a life now that I'll never be able to know. But I think about that little girl would now be 28, 29, probably having her own children. No, God, no, she's early 30s, you know? She could have been, her and my sister could be living next door to each other, have their babies play together, you know? So it's a whole life, not just her life, but my life that I didn't live. I could be a grandmother now.
And so many women in the Western world talk about abortion as if it's like, you know, women's right. And
I did too, you know, up until I had one, I did.
But how are so many women who are able to have abortion and still live a functional life and they're not?
I don't know. I've had that conversation with a friend recently as well, because a friend of hers was married. They weren't ready for a baby, so she went to have an abortion and then went on to have 2 more kids. And she's like, I feel wrong that I don't feel wrong. I just...
okay.
So she's like, should I feel guilty? It's so, yeah. And I mean, like, I work in the whole kind of pro-life space now as well. And it's a heavy, heavy place to live, but people have been lied to so much. And the problem is it's an industry with its own incentives now. And women are basically sort of gaslit into thinking, well, no, it's empowering to have an abortion. It's not devastating.
Empowering, you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, to be the amount of women that we meet, I work for Diamond Women. We're a pregnancy support centre. And so we work with women who are, you know, either having a crisis pregnancy, not sure what to do, and we'll talk them through other options. And then we counsel women as well who are post-abortion, have had, you know,
deal with
poor outcomes from it and trauma and everything. And what we're seeing more often now come through is girls who just have an abortion as a complete reflex. They do not have a conversation with anyone. They could take a pill. And that's it. And the pill itself, you know, the actual abortion pill is really, really poor outcomes, like 13% severe, I mean, hospitalization level side effects. You know, infection, sepsis, that kind of thing, for an incomplete abortion. But like, if they get away with not having those kind of physical ramifications, they know what they've done, and then they're traumatized by it, and they come to us for counseling. It's like, I didn't even talk to anybody. I just took the pill. I didn't even have a conversation with anyone. So our campaign is this year's Gift a Conversation for Christmas. It's like, donate to us to support our counselling services, so women have somewhere to actually have a conversation with somebody first before they go ahead and make this devastating decision. And yeah, look, I mean, there's always people in the world who have no sense of, like, they're just in the world and they have no sense of spirituality and they have no sense in, you know, like, that's just how it is. And those people, yeah, they can kind of merrily get on with their lives. But in the long run, it's not going to be like that. And
if you had not had such a good Catholic upbringing, you wouldn't have felt so guilty about the abortion, right?
I don't agree with that either. The place I was coming from, and like, this was the whole kind of rhetoric around the time as well, kind of late 90s into the 2000s and right up until now, is that Ireland was this backward place that didn't even allow women to have an abortion, and 12 women a day were leaving Ireland to go and have an abortion in England, and why shouldn't they have abortion in Ireland and all that kind of stuff. But all you do with that is normalise it. And I still think, like, you know, I was Catholic at the time. I was a teenager, but I was very confused and messed up, and I was doing a lot of drinking and drugs and all the rest of it. My Catholicism didn't come into weighing up the decision, and it didn't come into
you feeling guilty.
Me feeling guilty. It didn't. because I wasn't engaged. I wasn't really engaged with anything at that point either. And I went to confession, yes, but like it was like it just rolled off me. It didn't. Jesus forgives you, but you have to forgive yourself. So, well, I can't forgive myself. How can God forgive me? He must be like, and it was sort of like, oh, that's not a thing then, because I can't forgive myself. That was what it was about. So it wasn't about being a devout Catholic that I felt guilty. I knew that I had done something to my own soul that I couldn't fix anymore. So I don't, the guilt, the shame, whatever, these are emotions that we have as human beings. And they're there for a purpose too. God makes good of all things. Your guilt will drive you to, make better in the world or make, better of your mistakes. Your shame can make you hide, and that's why you need to face up to your shame. And it's bound up in pride. And pride, it is the ultimate sin, isn't it? Humility is the only antidote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last question, Marsha.
Yep.
Tell me 3 things Australia is better than. In 3 ways, Australia is better than Ireland. Because I'm pretty sure. Weather.
Okay, no, well, seriously, 3 ways that Australia is better than Ireland. It's much more of kind of an open sense of opportunity here. I think it's a bit more sort of like American and, entrepreneurial style. There is that sense that you can kind of do anything and be anywhere. It's safer.
Yeah.
A crime-ridden area here is still probably, I would say safer than, kind of a normal, common guard place in Ireland. That was always my sense. I think it's even worse in Ireland now though as well, because like crime rates have shot up through the roof over the last 10 years or so in Ireland. And I would also say you still got a bit of the tall poppy thing you got from the Irish. So there's some stuff in Australia that you've really gotten from Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, the tall poppy thing, that's definitely an Irish thing. Whereas like pulling down the people who are doing well. But other than that, I would say...
Would you say Australia is more Irish or British? The people and the culture?
I think it's more British. I think it's more kind of... I think the culture is more Protestant in nature, and I think though it's by liberalism and things like that, like it has a propensity more. I think that's more of a kind of a British propensity. It's like I think so. I think you've got shades of Irish influence, but it's still a much more kind of a Protestant country, I think, overall. Yeah.
So I think the first 6 cardinals from Australia were all Irish.
Is that right?
Yeah. I don't know about Cardinal Pell. Was he Irish?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's still lots and lots of the history and everything of the Catholic Church that I'm going to be finding out about over the next few, for the rest of my life, really.
So can you end with the work that you're doing now, and where are you at your life right now?
So I work for Diamond Women, and as I said, we're a pregnancy support service. So it's around crisis pregnancy. So what we want is women who are in that position to call us, and we will help them in whatever way they need and in whatever space they are in their life. So that if they're thinking about having an abortion, we will talk them through all of their options. And, we'll explain kind of safety issues and things like that aren't actually explained a lot of the time. And then, so it's up to them then what decision they make. And we go on that journey with them. If she decides to have a termination and that's what she needs, then we'll say, support her through that process and whatever. And she can come back to us for counselling afterwards. And there's various groups and things like that we do. We've got, programs, and they can access counselling for up to a year every week for free. So it's a lot. It's an amazing resource that Jennifer's built up over the years. And then if she is going to have the baby, if adoption seems to have fallen away completely, it is still an option, and we will walk her through that path as well. But then if she's going to have the baby herself and care for the baby herself, we'll support her on that journey too. material support, we do casework, we'll link her to all the services that she might need. And we do a whole hospital bag, years worth of clothes for the baby, those kind of things, nappies, whatever else, cot, pram, car seat, anything she needs, we will gather it for her. So that's the idea. We're pro woman, pro baby, pro life organization. Yeah.
And do you enjoy doing it?
Love it. Love it. I've been there for just coming up to a year now. I started volunteering with them when I had my whole conversion. I was like, I need to do something in crisis pregnancy. Like, is there something? And I didn't want to get into anything political or that was too sort of militant.
Like an activism.
Yeah. And I asked around and somebody came back and said, oh, have you heard of Diamond Women? And I looked them up and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm home.
Yeah.
Because it's the completely non-judgmental space of it. If this girl comes to us and ultimately her decision is to have an abortion, we'll say, we are here for you. What you need from us. She goes on with her life. She goes on her way merrily, then that's fine. But if she needs that support afterwards, we're there for her as well, and to lift her back up and and then walk her through that kind of early motherhood as well.
And your motherhood with Marcus, are you enjoying it?
Oh my God, it's so good. He's such a good kid. And I obviously I'm biased. But he is the kind of kid that like adults like him and he really finds it really easy to make friends. And he's a bit of an all-rounder. He's okay at his academics. He's quite good at his sport. He's just he's just one of those kids. He's just happy and free. And that's the loveliest thing for me, actually, because obviously we've had a bit of a journey ourselves and, single parenthood and all the rest of it. But he still seems to be really grounded and really not, I feel like I have protected him to some extent. But yeah, he's very grounded considering everything. And he has his whole big, because his dad is from Zimbabwe and his whole family are here. So he does have that whole big family with them as well. So he has a half sister, he has stepbrothers, he has cousins that he calls his sisters and everything. So yeah, he's got a good life going on. I'm very proud of him.
Amazing, Marsha.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your journey.
Thank you, JD. And I'm going to be praying for you.
Thank you.
I'm going to include you in my rosary every day now, that you find that space and that forgiveness, because that healing that the Holy Spirit brings, it's coming. It will come. You just keep on the faith and keep moving towards it.
I think that's a wrap, Marsha.
Thank you.
We're right.